Hello everyone and welcome to EduTap. So today we have with us Mr. Prithviraj. He has cleared the Reserve Bank of India Grade B examination, the results of which came back just a few days back. So Mr. Prithviraj, first of all, welcome to EduTap.
Thank
And
you, sir.
heartiest congratulations from the entire team of EduTap for making it to RBI.
Thank you so much, sir. Thanks for having me indeed.
Thank you so much. How does it feel, first of all?
I mean, it's very difficult to describe in words, yeah, but I do feel very good. I mean, stating that would be an understatement, but yes, it's a different feeling altogether.
Yeah. Right. So we'll be talking all about his journey for Reserve Bank of India examination. He has quite a rich experience of appearing for various examinations, like State Bank of India PO, right, GIC examination, then NABARD Grade A, then Reserve Bank of India Grade B. Let me also tell you that this was his third attempt at RBI Grade B, but the first serious attempt. So we'll be talking about his journey, his learnings from the different examinations, the various do's and don'ts that aspirants should definitely keep in mind and not repeat the same mistakes that people who have cleared this time they committed when they were appearing for the first time or the second time. So do watch this video till the end so that you can benefit in your attempt for Reserve Bank of India as well as other examinations, because certain things they remain common, right? So Prithviraj, let me first start with your education qualification. Please tell us
Yes,
about
sir.
your background first.
Sir, I'm a mechanical engineer and I studied from RB College of Engineering, Bangalore, and I'm a graduate of 2014.
Right.
So after mechanical, I did not pursue any higher studies at all. So my goal was to crack the civil services exam. So that's about it. I did not appear in the campus placements as well. So although, I mean, at least in the city that I studied in, that is supposed to be a very reputed institution in itself. But although I had a few placement offers and opportunities, I thought to call it quits and decide, I mean, pursue something that is what I wanted to do.
Right.
So I did not appear in any placement selections, but I started preparing for civil services in 2014.
Right. This is a very bold decision, I must say, right? Because your friends and your peers must be taking jobs and partying and everything that okay, I've got a placement. So
Yes.
how what made you take this bold step that okay, you will not even sit for the campus placement and you will prepare exclusively for civil services?
Yes, sir. So the first factor that motivated me was I basically am a reluctant engineer, so to say. So
I think
so it is
everyone
a,
is.
yes, I that is a candid admission that I would like to make. So वो होता है ना कि आप 10th में अच्छा स्कोर कर लेंगे, 12th में अच्छा स्कोर कर लेंगे, and then you get into engineering, you follow the tide, and when you go there, you don't want to do that. So that happened to me. And then maybe in the second year and third year, I started looking for opportunities, and there were a few peers of mine who were pursuing this at college.
Okay.
So I decided to follow that. And apart from that, both of my grandfathers have been civil servants in the
Okay.
past.
Okay.
So yes, that was the thought behind it. So,
Understood. Understood. ठीक है. So after your BTech, you started preparing for civil services. How many
yes,
years did you invest in that preparation?
sir, I started in 2014.
Hmm.
So I graduated in July 2014,
Hmm.
and from July until January 2015, it was my self preparation, self
Okay.
study mode.
Hmm.
And in 2015 Jan, I enrolled myself in a popular coaching institute.
Hmm.
And after that, up to June 2015 was the coaching period,
Hmm.
and that was my first attempt. So August 2015 was my first attempt.
Hmm.
So I cleared the prelims and could not make it to the mains.
Hmm.
16 again the same story, cleared the prelims but could not clear the mains. 17 again the same story, cleared the prelims and mains. So it was January 2018 that I remember, Jan 10th. I remember the date very well.
Okay.
So the result was out and I was expecting to qualify, but unfortunately I couldn't make it. So I mean that was a time when I felt terrible. I felt shattered. I felt dejected, and all the bad things that you can think
Understood.
of. So after that, I started looking for alternative opportunities. So teaching was one thing that came to my mind. So that was one thing I thought I would go back to a coaching, I mean any coaching institute, and teach at least my optional or subjects that I'm good at. But I thought, no, that's not something that would be that would keep me happy in the long run. So it would give me some financial independence, but yes, at the same time, that was not something that would give me happiness in the long run or satisfaction in the long run. I knocked at a few private companies, but they were not willing to take me because I had a long gap between 2015 and 18. I mean, my girlfriend, who is my wife now, so she was a SBI PO at that time. So she said, why don't you look at exams conducted by IBPS such as RBI, NABARD, SBI, and various insurance PSU exams. At
So
least for
behind
the
every successful man, there is a woman, right?
sir, absolutely. There are. I mean, if I have to say, my mother was also very supportive. So my grandmother was very supportive. So I have three. I have had the pleasure of having three strong women behind me. So I was initially very reluctant because civil services preparation is very different, and the preparation for these exams is very different. So I even today I would confess that I'm not very good at quant and reasoning. So those are not my subjects at all. So she asked me to at least take a mock test of a free mock test of any website, coaching website. So I did that, and she said, okay, this is very encouraging in the beginning. So if you join any offline coaching institute where they can train you on a personal basis, she said she was sure I would do good. And eventually, as I said, I cracked the SBI PO exam of 2018, but did not join. And at the same time, GICRE's result was also announced. So again, taking my wife's piece of advice, I joined GICRE.
Okay.
So yes, so that is how GICRE happened to this.
Okay.
And that's how the switch from civil services to banking and financial sector happened.
Understood. So no civil services after 2017.
Not really, sir. 2020, I appeared once, but that was not a serious attempt, and I could not get past the prelims.
Understood.
Yeah, and
so I think that momentum once broken, it's very
yes, it is broken. It is broken, and it's very difficult to get back to that phase of preparation. So now, especially, I mean, I wouldn't say it's impossible, but I've lost the steam, I may say now. Yes.
Understood. I think the first 2 or 3 attempts are your best attempts.
Those are the best.
After
attempts.
that, it becomes downhill.
Yes, absolutely. You become clueless as to what, I mean, where you went wrong and what things can be improved upon. So, I mean, I was not finding that clarity at that point in time. So I decided to completely switch over to a different area.
Understood. So what was the reason of not joining SBI? Because you cleared this GIC also. That was the reason.
Earlier I had cleared the GICRE exam, and I was waiting for my joining instruction. Okay. So in the meantime, the joining instructions came, and I joined SBI. I mean GICRE. Yes. Worked there for a few months, and then the SBI's result was announced. Okay. So I had the choice of resigning and going back to Bangalore. But then my wife said, you please continue there. So that's how it happened.
So in hindsight, was this a good decision of staying with GIC and not going to SBI?
Yes.
Of RBI and
yes, sir. Because that is one of the considerations that went behind this decision. Because on one side, I had the prospect of staying at Mumbai, which was an alien city for me at that point, coming from Bangalore. And on the other hand, I had the opportunity of home state and home posting and things like that. But my wife told that the job in SBI is, it's a bit more demanding than what you would otherwise do in GICRE. So in hindsight, I would certainly say that it was a better choice to understand.
Please tell us about your experience of other examinations like Reserve Bank of India first attempt, then second, NABARD, right?
Yes, sir. Yes. So as I said, I switched over to banking and financial services in 2018. So I think the exam was held in probably I don't remember the time. I think it was June or July of 2018. So so in the quant reasoning and GA flow, I just cleared the prelims of RBI Grade B of 2018, but I couldn't make it to the interview stage. So the mains was a rude shock to me. So I was under the impression that if someone has prepared for civil services, then probably he or she should be able to do good in the ESI and F&M paper. So I did well in the F&M paper, but ESI was a total shocker to me. So I scored somewhere in the 40s at that time. So I couldn't clear the cutoff by about 8 or 9 marks back then. Before that, I had appeared in NABARD Grade A. So again, the same problem had happened back then. So I cleared the prelims and missed the interview cutoff by a good 16 odd marks. So that some sort of an exposure I had before appearing in the RBI grade B. So the gap between between the cutoff and my score in NABARD was actually far greater than in RBI. So I would say that was some sort of an improvement, but I was just not there. So that was about it. And 2019 again, it was RBI grade B. So the exam was one day before my wedding. So November 9th was the exam and November 10th was my wedding. So I somehow managed to appear for the exam, but I knew it was not going to happen. So I couldn't clear the prelims itself in 2019. I did not appear in NABARD in 2019 at all for various reasons. And NABARD 2020 was again February 2020. So the prelims was good, the result was announced, and the same night there was a long lockdown. So I thought I had the opportunity, so I studied well. And September 24th was the exam. I did good.
You are good at remembering dates or what?
No, these dates are important to me because when I look back at them, I sort of feel good that okay, I've come a long way.
Okay, because you remembering the exact date and all. This is the first time I think I'm listening from a candidate.
No, this has always been the way I have kept things in mind.
Okay, you must have history optional in UPSC.
No, it was public administration, sir. Absolutely not history.
Okay.
So yeah, the exam was held in September, and the result of which came in November. So I was happy that I at least got to the interview stage.
Right.
So the interview was held in December. The interview went well, so I scored full marks in the interview in NABARD grade.
25.
Yeah, 25. So after that, I missed the select list cutoff by 1.25 marks, and I was waitlisted.
Understood.
So there were a few mistakes which I would highlight in the due course, especially in the objective ESI part, ESI ARD part. So those mistakes actually held me back, because of which my score went down by -5. So I made 10 mistakes in the 2 marker part, which I shouldn't have. So that dragged my score down. So after that, after the result was announced, then I applied for RBI grade B. And I had very little time for the preparation, because I think the result of NABARD grade A was announced in the month of February and exam was held on 6th March 2021. So within that short span, I had to revise current affairs of at least 4 months. So I did that. Somehow I managed that, but I had absolutely no time for quant and reasoning part. So English was never a worry for me. So I've done well in English sections of all objective papers. So that's about it. So that's how the preparation went on.
Understood. So can you tell me something that you were saying that okay, you learned something from the ESI plus ARD objective part of NABARD? What was that?
Yes, sir. So as most of the viewers of this video would know, the paper was slightly unconventional in the sense that it was not current affairs heavy paper. So it was more of static knowledge, and it was more of core ARD part. So most of us were taken aback when we were appearing in that paper, especially the objective part. So it so happened that there was a lot of time between the prelims and the mains. So most of us who were preparing had thought that okay, most of the people have studied well, so we must give it our best in the exam, and not taking risk would be riskier than actually taking a risk. So in that sense, I attempted questions left and right, so that dragged my score down. So the key takeaway from here would be, if you find the paper unconventional, if you find the paper on the difficult side, and if you prepared well and you're true to your conscience that yes, I've studied well, then the paper is difficult for everyone. It is not just for any XYZ candidate who thinks in that manner. So that is a key takeaway, and that I implemented that in the RBI ESI objective part. So that helped me in boosting the score in the objective part.
Okay. This is a very important learning, I must say. Right.
No, this is a very important takeaway, and I discussed it. I discussed this with the people, and I discussed it even with my wife at home. So this is the important takeaway, because other than that, on the preparation front, I don't think anything was lacking. So most of us prepare based on the past trends. So that's not in our hand if the paper changes or if the format changes or things like that. But once you know that the paper is different and it's not on the expected lines, then you should always have the the mental strength to put up with that difficult paper. So the struggle is not about what you prepare before the exam. It is about how you execute your attempt in the exam. So that is a very important part of preparation.
Well said. I think going in the examination hall with a fixed mindset, that can ruin someone's chances, right?
Precisely, sir. Precisely, because if someone has thought on some lines and the paper is not on those lines, then you're mentally demolished in the very first question that you see. So that should not happen at all. Never go to the examination hall with any preconceived notions. So this was an important lesson that even helped me in the prelims of RBI Grade B. So the paper was on a very difficult side this time, whether it was quant, reasoning, and English, or the general awareness part.
Understood. Actually, I am just reminded of an analogy here. Let's say a cricketer batsman is playing on the field and he has taken the stance for a Yorker ball, but the ball comes out to be, let's say, a bouncer one. So
he should be able to he should be able to duck in that sense.
Right.
So instead of defending, he has to duck. So that's what he has to do.
And he has to think on the feet at
that instance and within those few minutes of the paper, because initially, if somebody is losing that confidence in the first 10 to 15 minutes of the 1.5 hours paper, then that's the end of it. It's not going to work at all.
Yes. Understood. Very well said. Acha, Prithviraj, coming to the RBI examination, right?
Yes, sir.
Now this attempt, the one which you cleared.
Yes, sir.
So let's start with the interview stage. We'll come from interview to phase 2 to phase 1.
All right.
Right. So tell me everything about the interview. How was the interview this time around? This was through virtual mode. Then how was the panel? How many members were there? What kind of questions were asked? Were the questions on expected lines from your job profile, from your biodata form, from the current affairs, or from something else? Tell me everything about the interview. How did you prepare?
Okay. Yeah. So my interview was scheduled on 23rd August 2021, and this was at the Bombay Central Office of RBI Services Board. So we were asked to report at 8:30 and I arrived at 8:30. So they asked us to wait in the cafeteria, and the biometric verification, the attendance, and all those formalities were conducted at that time. So one by one, people started appearing. So my turn was my turn was supposed to be pre-lunch, but I went to the waiting room, and the coordinator told me that the panel has advised my interview would be held after the lunch. So soon after the lunch. So my interview was the first to be scheduled post lunch. So the panel was headed by Shri B.B. Joshi, and there were 4 other members apart from him, which included 2 women, 2 lady members, and that's about it. So that's the composition of the panel.
Right.
And I did not recognize the chair of the panel because I have not seen the other members at all. So at that time. So now though I googled and I got to know this is this person, but I asked the coordinator as to who the chair of the panel is, and he said the name of Shri B.B. Joshi. So as I entered, they were discussing amongst themselves that there were far too many candidates from insurance background on that day at Mumbai office. So before me, a few people from New India Assurance Company and one of my colleagues had already completed the interview. My batchmate from GIC, and others were from New India Assurance Company Limited. So as I entered, they were looking at my biodata, and perhaps they were not aware that I had entered the hall. So they were discussing that there were many insurance candidates for the day, and again this is another candidate from insurance background. So once they noticed me, they wished me and they asked me to sit. I did not wish on my own because I did not want to cut in their conversation. So I was just being a spectator to what they were speaking, and once they realized that I was there, they wished me and I returned the the courtesy to them, and they asked me to take a seat. The chair asked me whether I was feeling comfortable. Then once I said yes, then the interview went on. But I would say the interview was not on expected lines again, because I am from insurance, and more specifically from reinsurance. So I thought the interview would be more about reinsurance. How does it work? How does it help insurance and things like that? My company's profile, my work at the moment, my job description, my role in GICRE, GICR is strategic presence in India, privatization, FDI. I had studied almost everything for the insurance sector, but nothing was asked from insurance, but a few questions. So the interview started like a bullseye question. So the chair of the panel asked me whether I knew something about IBC. So I said, yes, sir, I do know about IBC. So he asked me, that was the time when the parliamentary committee had presented its view on the efficacy of IBC, functioning of IBC, what are its shortcomings. It had suggested a few measures of improvement and things like that. So he asked me, have I read the report? Have I heard about the report of the committee? So I said, yes, sir. But I had to confess before he could ask me. So I said, I have read the report. I've heard about the report. I've read newspaper articles and I've read editorial analysis of that. But I must confess, sir, that I haven't read the report in detail. So he said, no, the report, I don't expect you to read the voluminous report, but at least you know about the report is what he asked. So I said, yes, sir. So then he started off asking questions from that. He asked me to give a brief of the findings of the committee, a few of its suggestions. Why was the committee being so critical of the functioning of IBC and things like that. So I spoke for about 2.5 to 3 minutes, if my memory serves me well. And after that, he said, okay, now that you've spoken at length about the report, I want you to comment on one important finding. So should the Parliament accept the committee's recommendation that beyond a certain threshold, haircut should not be accepted by Committee of Creditors? Then I went on to explain what determines the haircut that Committee of Creditors takes. It depends on the commercial bidding process. It depends on the sector in which that industry is located. So let's say if you have a coal field and you have a tangible asset, then obviously the haircut will be smaller in the resolution process. But if you have an MSME, or if you have a company that is not a brand in itself, or which does not have many tangible assets, then naturally the haircuts would be higher, because the loan servicing of that industry, the credit servicing of that concern will be based on the functioning of the company as a going concern. So if the company has ceased operations, if it has dues for operation creditors, then nobody would want to take that company at a higher value. So that decides the haircut. So he patiently heard me and he said, no, that's not what I want to know. I want to know whether it is justifiable to legislate a threshold. I just want an answer in yes or no, and your supporting argument for that. So I said, in a market economy, I don't think that will be the most optimum way to go forward, because the purpose of IBC is to have a market-based mechanism to resolve a company, and liquidation is the last option that the IBC should be looking at. And if the company is getting resolved, irrespective of the haircut that the creditors are taking now, then that should be the way forward, because that basically gives some incentive to the creditors to have some diligence. Because let's say if the creditors are assured of some recovery, of certain minimum recovery, then what would be the incentive for them to do the diligence before lending and analysis of cash flow and things like that. So he was quite impressed with that answer. And
this first question made a very good impression, I think, on the board. Na?
Sir, the discussion on the discussion on this question lasted for about 7 or 8 minutes.
Half of the interview, I think, went on this itself.
Yes. The interview was about 20-24 minutes, 20 to 25 minutes, and at least 1/3 of the discussion was on this particular question. So I wouldn't call it a question. In hindsight, I would call it a discussion with him. So that was the only question that he asked me, and he passed it on to the next member. So the next member asked me a few technicalities like definition of systemic risk, how does it arise, how do you prevent a systemic risk, and things like that. And what is credit to risk weighted assets ratio? Why do we have CRAR? So I gave the definition of CRAR. Then he said, okay, you defined it in mathematical terms, but give me the logic of CRAR. Then I told him that that basically represents the proportion of capital that you have commensurate with the risk that the bank is taking. So he said, okay, you've simplified it. Now you tell me why do banks even need capital? So it went on. He was trying to dig out the fundamentals from me. So I explained why banks need capital. So he said, what is risk? You said risk-weighted assets ratio. So he said, what are risk weights? So I told him, sir, I do not know the numerical values
Exact
associated.
numbers.
So he said, no, just give me the logic behind risk weight. So I told him each segment of credit carries a different risk, credit risk, and that is how different risk weights are arrived at. So he said, okay, fine. And then he passed it on to another female member. So the female member was quite curious about my gap year, and quite expectedly so. So she asked me what was I doing between 2014 and 18. So I told her about the background story. Then she asked me, have I exhausted all my attempts? So I said, yes, I've exhausted all my attempts. And she asked me, are you, as in, what was your optional? So I told her public administration. So from there, the actual interview from that man started. So he asked me what theory of public administration I admire the most and why.
Okay.
So I spoke about rational decision making of Herbert Simon. And why? Because back in the time when Herbert Simon was writing that thesis, rational decision making was not a big thing. Although people knew that rational decision making is important, but they did not have the wherewithal or the capability to implement that in practice. So I told her, today we are in the age of big data analytics, in the age of machine learning, where patterns can be identified, where data can be structured in a proper format so that it can be used as information into decision making. So I used a management jargon that programmable decisions are becoming a reality today, rather than non-programmed decisions, which are based on individual considerations, experience, biases, and things like that. So she said, okay, this is all okay, but we also have behavioral economics. So what do you say about behavioral economics? That is somewhat that somewhat debunks the thought of rational decision making. So I said it basically explains individuals as non-rational entities. So classical economics assumes individuals to be perfectly rational individuals, humans to be perfectly rational individuals, but that is not what happens in real life. People are motivated by people are motivated by extra rational considerations, and they are also driven into action by things like habits and things that come to them first. So I told you can, I mean, I told her that you can consider behavioral economics as one of the approaches to encourage people to take optimum decisions, and that is what nudge theory does. So she asked me, can you just give me a thought? And there's a jargon used by Richard Thaler to that. So I said, ma'am, I'm not very sure, but I think it is libertarian paternalism. She asked me, why libertarian paternalism? Why do you think it is that way? So I said, libertarian because you're giving choice to the people to make the decisions that they want. But paternalism because you know what is the most optimum choice for them. So in that sense, it is libertarian paternalism. And in a way, it is encouraging people to take rational decisions. So it is not something that debunks Herbert Simon's rational decision-making model. So this conversation went out for about 5 to 7 minutes. It was quite a long conversation. And she said she found it very interesting. So,
I am finding it very interesting because my optional was also public administration.
So, that's very interesting.
So I actually enjoyed what you just spoke.
Yeah. So I said it's a very different approach. Simon's approach was different to rational decision making model, and that of behavioral economics is different. But the end goal is to encourage people to move towards rational decision making.
I'm just now reminded of Prasad and Prasad.
So that's a Bible to me. I just love that textbook.
Yeah.
So yes, so that's how the conversation went on, and she said she's very impressed with the conversation, and she found it very interesting. So then the same ma'am asked me, okay, now that you've spoken about management, now let's move on to something of your personal choice. So she asked me, if we give you an opportunity to be part of RBI, which department would you want to work? I said financial inclusion and development. Okay. So she asked me, she asked me why. Then I said,
sorry, let me just
yes, sir, yes, sir,
so
please.
Financial inclusion department, you in the interview chose because you wanted the interview to go towards financial inclusion as a topic, or actually you wanted to join?
No, actually I'm interested in that department. Okay. So that is why I spoke.
Please take it. Thank you.
Yes, sir. So it was not a it was not a conscious attempt to drive the interview in a particular direction, but it was very instinctive. So at that point, you have very little window to give an answer to a question like that. So if they ask you to structure some answer, then you can take a pause for, let's say, 20 seconds or 30 seconds, structure content and articulate it later on. But for a question related to HR matter, I don't think one has to take a pause and answer, because that shows that you're making up an answer. So it should appear instinctive. Yes. So I instinctively said financial inclusion and development. Then she asked me why. So I said civil services preparation. I mean, I was motivated towards civil services preparation due to my interest in socio-economic policy issues, and financial inclusion forms a backbone of socio-economic development in the country. And that didn't happen to me. So in RBI, this is one logical continuation of my personal aspiration, is what I told her. So she, I don't know what to say, but she just smiled at me. And she asked me a question. Okay, now that you said financial inclusion and development, she asked me, should RBI continue to lead the effort towards achieving financial inclusion and development? Then I said, she told me upfront that she doesn't want to listen to any story or any background. She just wants to know yes or no and why. So I said yes, because RBI has a long history of policy making, and it is a repository of experience and knowledge. So that is one point. And the second point is RBI carries enough weight in the financial sector to elicit and effect coordination with various stakeholders and other sectoral regulators as well. So in that sense, yes, I do believe that the goal of financial inclusion should be spearheaded by Reserve Bank of India under the overall policy guidance of Ministry of Finance. So this is how I articulated that particular answer.
One question I have here, Prithviraj.
Yes, sir.
When you answer any question,
yes,
you
sir.
naturally use a lot of keywords, or this is something that you have learned over the time?
Sir,
when you are answering any question, this is the first time that I'm listening from any candidate. You use a lot of keywords.
Yes,
like
sir.
You just use stakeholders, repository of knowledge.
Yes, sir.
There's some keywords that actually UPSC mains answer writing will teach, that put keywords. So this is something that you've learned.
No, it has become habitual now, because I have appeared in the mains thrice, and this is a feedback that I've always received from my erstwhile mentors who used to coach me for civil services, and that's about it. So that's how the vocabulary has developed.
But it is really good. Like, everyone does not have this vocabulary.
So I would say, if somebody is appearing in an interview in an institution like NABARD or RBI or SEBI or any policy making institution, then this vocabulary will definitely leave a lasting impression on the interview. So that is what distinguishes everyone from the other candidates, from their competitors.
Understood.
So I would suggest, I'm going out of the way. That slightly digressing from your question. So I basically, I'm a habitual newspaper reader. So during my preparation, I used to read Hindu and Indian Express. That habit has stayed with me. So for RBI, I used to read Financial Express and Economic Times and Mint as well. So Business Standard is the most popular choice, but for some reason I haven't read Business Standard till date. But that newspaper reading, the analyticals that they post, again, Business Line is another good newspaper coming from the Hindu group. So yes, that will help any individual develop the required vocabulary to appear in descriptive as well as in the interview. Now going forward, the descriptive is only going to get more challenging. So the first batch that joins after the pattern change will have some advantage of novelty, but that advantage will soon start waning away when people get to know the experiences of candidates who appeared in the past.
Right.
So the sure short way to achieve some competence is to develop a vocabulary.
Understood. So this is very good, really very good. You have really have a very strong vocabulary of keywords that you're using in every answer. Stuffing, not using stuffing in every answer.
Thank you. It has become habitual to me now, sir. It's not a conscious.
I'm quite surprised you could not clear the UPSC mains because you are structuring your answers very well. You know, in vocal form, you are structuring your answers very well. So in written form, you must be doing it, better than this.
Yes, sir. In hindsight, if I have to comment on something, then I would say 15 was my first attempt. So that was I mean, I was a kacha khiladi, if I were to use that word. And 15 to 16 was a big leap for me. So I missed the cutoff by mains cutoff by about 10 marks. So then I thought 16 to 17 would be, at least if I score about 70 to 80 marks more than what I've scored in 16. And that was going to happen only by improving 1 mark per question. So that is what I was looking at. But what happened in 17 was my optional score went from 289 or 290 in 2016 to 190 in 2017.
Oh
so
my
the
God.
Yeah, so that is
Out of
still a
500?
Yes, sir, out of 500. So had that
it was PubAd 2013, 14 all over again.
Sort of, sir. I don't know what happened with other candidates, but I completely lost interest in the whole process after 2017 PubAd. So I thought I'm not going back to that unless I have something concrete in my bag. So that's how it happened.
Really unfortunate.
So my GS score was very good. It was in 400s, but the optional ruined my prospect in that year, sir.
Hard lagna, par chalo, in hindsight.
Yes, in hindsight,
well, that ends well.
But the point that I would like to make is, once you've given so many serious attempts in civil services, you'll become so capable that you will be very good at articulating things. So that is something that I would really be thankful to UPSC preparation, that it has helped me grow as an individual, it has helped me grow as a personality. And it has helped me become very articulate. I mean, at college, I was not so bold, or I was not so open, or I was not so confident in myself, about myself.
Actually, knowledge gives you that confidence. Now you have gained that knowledge now.
Possibly, sir. Possibly.
Okay, let's come back to the interview. So this was all regarding the interview. Any other question?
There were two other members. So the ma'am passed on the interview to the next member, and he was a male. So he asked me, how are you happy with the progress that financial inclusion has achieved so far? So I was again trying to give him facts and figures regarding bank accounts and credit from institutional sources, penetration of insurance and things like that. So he said, no, I don't want the numbers. I want an opinion of yours. So it struck to my mind at that point that the financial inclusion index was just released at the time I was appearing in the interview. So I told them, if I were to quantify, then I would say we have come halfway from where we started, because the score is 53.9. And while it is a encouraging progress, we still have about half the way to go before we achieve universal financial inclusion. So he said, yes, I like the way you quantified it. He told this to me on my face. So it's very rare to find it in an interview. So then he asked me basically the issues related to insurance sector, why the penetration is so low in the non-life segment, and what is IRDAI doing about it? What are the insurance companies doing about it? Is it related to the cost of insurance itself, or is it related to awareness? So if I were to recommend increasing awareness, what I would do, and things like that. And then finally, it was passed on to the final member. So again, it was a female member. So the ma'am asked me, what are the parameters on which RBI comes out with a score of financial inclusion index? So I told her the 3 parameters of access, usage, and quality. So that was about it. And then she asked me, then she built a story. So she said banks are basically facing a lot of risks in the present circumstances, and the risks will only continue to grow. So apart from the traditional risks like credit risk, country risk, systemic risk, and things like that, a very important risk of banks that goes unnoticed is reputation risk. So reputation risk and operational risk. Operational risk is always there, but it doesn't get as recognized as credit risk or any other risk, is what she told me. So she asked me to cite 2 instances where operational risk has led to reputation risk or reputation damage of banks or financial entities. So I told her the example of Punjab National Bank, where the operational aspect at a branch in Mumbai had caused the letter of undertakings fraud. The other example that I gave her was of a private sector lender where the CEO of that lender was on the credit sanctioning committee, and that committee indeed sanctioned loans to her spouse's entities, business entities. So she asked me whether I was sure that the second example is that of an operational risk. So I said, ma'am, yes, I do. I'm not very sure, but I do understand it as an operational risk because there was a plain conflict of interest in that scenario, and the CEO did not recuse herself from the sanctioning committee, which she ideally should have done. So that ended the interview. So the chair said, okay, your interview is over. Best of luck for your result, is what he told me.
Really lengthy interview, and
yes.
but really good, really very what should I say? Interesting interview.
But after the interview, I was not very sure because they did not ask me anything regarding my work profile or my educational background or anything.
Perhaps they were tired of asking those questions from the previous candidates regarding
possibly, sir, possibly. But I was at that time, I was not very sure. I got to know only when I came home and I saw social media that so many transcripts have come from insurance sector for the day, and a few people even commented on that aspect. So that's when I realized, okay, that could be the reason they did not ask me anything from my present employer.
Understood. Okay, thank you for that very elaborate answer on interview.
Thank you.
Now coming to the phase 2 part. Yes. So finance and management, ESI, descriptive English. English, I think you are already good in English, so not much of practice would have been.
No, I did not practice for English at all.
Right.
I mean,
at all.
That,
Zero.
At all. Absolutely not. I just took one learning from NABARD grade A mains is that if the interface is not friendly to you, don't bother about it. Just go on typing. Right. Just make sure you don't make errors and don't lose time in arguing with the personnel at the exam menu that the interface is not.
Right.
So I lost about good 10 minutes in the NABARD grade A to identify that it was not accepting an enter command after a spacebar. So, and I again went into panic in NABARD grade A because it was not giving me that one-liner gap in the letter writing.
Right.
So I took the learning from there that no matter what the interface is, you're just going to go and type and come out. That's what the English learning was. The second learning was never make discrete paragraphs in Prezi writing. So that can hamper your score. Prezi writing has to be a single paragraph of various paragraphs that are given in the passage. Yes. Do not borrow direct sentences from the Prezi writing. Stick to the word limit as much as possible in the essay. You have some, I personally feel there is some leverage in the essay writing part, but in the Prezi writing, the word limit is absolutely non-negotiable demand of the examiner. So one has to stick to it no matter what. That should be inclusive of the title. And the title has to be ideally of 4 or 5 words, not more than that. So these are the key takeaways that I took from NABARD grade A descriptive paper, where I had scored about 63 marks. So I took
a decent score.
It is quite a decent score, but I was expecting at least 65 or 66. But
but given the scoring pattern that year, 63 is quite a decent score.
Yeah. So that is a key takeaway that I learned from the NABARD grade A paper. So yes, English absolutely nothing.
Okay. What about FM?
Finance and management. Finance, again, it was based on current affairs. So my preparation was, I did not go into I did not have the luxury of going into topics like the sundry topics that are there in finance, such as derivatives and things like that. The general topics, basically.
Understood.
So I had some understanding and knowledge about that. So I said, okay, this is the risk that I'll be taking. And if the questions are of elementary level, then I will anyway solve that. If it is difficult, then I'm not going to touch that. So this is the thought that I went with. Again, but fortunately, the finance paper was basically current affairs related. The finance aspects, like you had a passage on FASTag, you had a passage on, I don't remember the question now, but there was a passage on FASTag, there was a passage on IPOs that you can apply from UPI for IPOs and things like that. So again, newspaper reading was something that helped me because all these things were in the news quite earlier, and depending on current affairs magazines was not the best strategy for me at that time. So newspaper reading has its own value. So the current affair magazine is always there. That is there for your revision. But on a day-to-day basis, you cannot pile up your current affairs and say, okay, I'm going to do only the current affairs for ESI and FM through magazine. The magazine will definitely help you for revising the content and not for accumulating knowledge.
Actually, when you read from the original source, it gives you a lot of context as well.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Context is really important to understand the news.
Yes. But the magazines have their own work. So that will come in the revision, because you cannot go back and take out so many newspapers and read. So that is the value of magazine. So it worked that way for me. So management, again, nothing specific, sir, because I did not have to study for the additional topics like ethics. I did not have to study for I think nudge theory, because I had already read that in the past. So basically that F&M was not a headache at all, sir. So I just practiced descriptive answer writing for that, and apart from that, nothing else.
Understood. What about ESI?
ESI, yes. ESI, as I already told you, I utilized the lockdown time to thoroughly study ESI current affairs. And then there is this Telegram channel by Shivam Agarwal. So he used to put out questions from ministry websites. So he used to dig out questions from schemes and various initiatives, and he used to prepare a small PDF. So I thought, if he is doing it to put out questions, I can always go back and do it to prepare my own notes.
Right.
So I used to go there and I prepared a bundle of notes from the key ministries. So that included Ministry of Rural Development, Ministry of
Health
and Family Welfare, Women and Child Development, Ministry of Skill Development, Ministry of Education. In fact, I prepared my self notes for the new education policy also, 2020. So that was my approach for ESI. Again, I used to meticulously follow PIB on a day-to-day basis. So what I used to do, I used to go to office early in the morning, and at office I would just open PIB's website and I used to look for the previous day's press release. So whatever I thought is important to us, I would just open it and save a PDF of that. So at the end of, I would read that, and at the end of the week I would consolidate all PDFs into a single PDF.
Okay, good.
And I would basically take a printout of that and keep that for revision. So I have been an avid follower of PIB. So
it's a very good source for current affairs. Very important.
Yes, sir, absolutely. Especially the answers that ministers give to parliamentary questions are very important in PIB. So I had the
because they give a lot of data in that answers.
Yes.
This many households, this many.
Yes. Precisely. So again, that was a hindsight from NABARD grade A paper, because there was a passage on skill development, and that passage on skill development was directly borrowed from a 2020 February PIB release. So I thought, chalo theek hai, agar itna to aa raha hai PIB, you know that it is coming from PIB. So why not go to PIB and do it?
Right.
So I started doing it on a day-to-day basis, and that helped me big time. So
good. Theek hai ji. So phase 2 preparation, okay, fine, done.
So this was for the objective. Again, descriptive was basically typing out answers. I would make my own questions and try to solve them. So I used to take GS3 papers. I used to take the previous year paper of RBI and just type answers. So I did not have the idea of word limit until the very last. Right. So the word limit came only towards the fag end of the preparation. Yes. So typing practice was something important. But my work requires me to type a lot. So typing speed was not a problem.
Understood. One question here I want to ask,
yes,
and this is the first time I'm asking this question.
Yes, sir.
When we write an answer, descriptive answer,
yes,
so is there, like in UPSC, we generally get a handouts that, okay, this is the intro and body and conclusion. I personally hate that idea of intro, body and conclusion.
Yes,
because intro can start from anything. It is not like intro will be like this. Intro can start from example. Intro can start from preamble. Intro can start from context. Intro can start from current affairs.
Absolutely.
It can start from a definition.
Yes.
Right, so what is your mantra of writing a answer, a good answer? Like, is it intro, body, conclusion, or some structure that you follow?
Sir, to say that I follow some particular structure would be a disservice to the people who are watching this video. So I try to basically look at the question. I think for like 30 seconds to 1 hour, 1 minute to articulate a structure in my mind, and then I put it on paper or I type it as the need be. Now, if you ask me my approach for the 15 markers, and I would take just one question from PIB if that is all right.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I attempted the question on 15th Finance Commission. There was a question on how the horizontal and vertical devolution takes place and things like that.
Let's say the question does not have a keyword of what, why, and how. It's an open-ended question with a directive.
Yeah.
So let's make a question right now. Let's say let's take an example. The GDP method of calculating national income is falls short of covering all the aspects of human development. Full stop, comment.
Okay. So now
it's a very simple question. Now it does not have what, why, and how. So it's a statement.
Yes.
With a directive.
Yes, it is a statement. It is a statement. So yeah, now to answer this question, I would basically go about with now that they've used at least one keyword, that GDP. So पहले तो मैं GDP का definition लिखूंगा उसके अंदर.
Okay.
So that will be the beginning. That it is the final value of output produced within the country's boundary in a defined period of time, and typically 1 year. So that will be the definition. Then I would say it basically looks into the measurable aspect of economic output.
Quantitative.
Yeah, quantitative basically. So then I would then proceed to explain how basic, and I would always keep in mind that comment is the directive at the end of the question. So when the directive is comment, you as a candidate, you always have to give your conclusion and your opinion. So either you give your opinion in the beginning that GDP is not the absolute metric to measure economic development, or you start off with the shortcomings of GDP as an economic, as a metric of evaluating a country's progress, and then at the end you can make a closing statement that based on the foregoing analysis, one may conclude. You never use we in an answer. Never use we or never use you. You always use one. One may conclude. So this is some hindsight that I carry from my UPSC preparation. So one may conclude that, okay, this is not the most objective metric, but it does serve a purpose in giving a quantifiable measure for comparative analysis between different periods or between different countries. So that would be my conclusion.
Understood. Now see, you have broken down the question into parts actually. So for the first question that you answered, what is GDP?
Yes, sir.
And the second question that you actually answered without making that micro question was that how is GDP an inadequate criteria to measure economic development or human development?
Precisely.
So you have broken down the main statement in the question into micro questions and started answering.
Yes, sir.
You can answer it in any way. No? You can use UNDP, you can use HDI, you can use a
yes, absolutely. There is again a new index that is coming into picture, that is called Social Progress Index.
Right.
So it takes into aspect things like gender equality. It takes into account aspects like inequality in access to opportunities of education, healthcare, nutrition, and things like that. So yeah, as you very well elaborated, that would be the approach that I would take.
Right. So take 30 seconds to 1 minute to understand what the question is actually
absolutely
asking, and focus on the keyword and then break down the question and then write.
Absolutely. But specifically speaking with regard to RBI exam, one has the luxury to think on these lines if he or she has a good typing speed and articulation. So these two things have to be there with you as a candidate. So articulation and typing speed. So if someone is not able to type 2000 words, then it's difficult. So although they say you can type about 75% of the word, the word limit, but if somebody is writing 550 or 560 words, he or she will obviously have an advantage over someone writing 450. So in such questions, without writing junk, you should be able to develop content. That is important.
Understood. Now let's come to phase one.
Yeah.
So again, please tell me quant, reasoning, English, and GA. Now you confessed in the very beginning that you're not very good in quant and reasoning.
So my marks will do the speaking for that part. Okay. Because I scored only 7 marks out of 30 in the maths part, the quant part, sorry. Yeah. And I scored, I think 12 or 12 and a half out of 60 in the reasoning part.
English. So let me guess in English. It must be 25 plus.
No, absolutely not. I missed a passage in English.
Oh my
So
God.
I was not able to complete the I mean I just
Okay.
left 5 marks in that passage, and a few errors happened here and there.
20 plus?
No, it was about 15.5 or
Okay.
15.75.
Okay. Okay.
So it happened that way.
Okay.
And general awareness, again, it was about 40, 41, 42.
GS saved you. GS saved you. Literally GS saved you.
Okay, I think the GA score was below par, but now
No,
that
but
you say,
according to the paper, it was really good. 40 is
okay,
really good.
so I scored 41 point, I think it was 42 point something.
It's a very good
I
score,
don't,
in fact,
okay, yes,
as per
thank
the
you.
paper.
Thank
Your
you.
quant and reasoning score is on the lower side,
Yes, sir. I
right?
made a confession in the beginning
But
itself.
your
So,
GS score literally saved you.
okay.
So all thanks to the newspapers and the PIBs and everything, right?
No, for the phase one, I followed a different source. So it was
Okay.
again Q&A compilation of a popular coaching website.
You
So,
can please tell the name, no issue at all.
okay, if you are okay with it,
Yeah,
I
yeah, please.
followed the I followed the Q&A PDF from Affairs Cloud,
Yes.
but I wouldn't recommend following this approach. I mean,
Hmm.
because as any candidate who had appeared in the paper would have known by now,
Hmm.
merely following the Q&A PDF of any institute, whether it is Affair Cloud or whether it is EduTap or any
Hmm.
other institution, is not going to help.
Hmm.
The content part of it has to be studied.
Hmm.
So since I had very limited time, I thought इतना मतलब 250-300 पेजेस का पीडीएफ वो भी 3 महीने का करना
But
नामुमकिन लगा
you
मुझे
were
उस
reading
वक्त.
the newspaper, so I think you already had the context and the actual
I
content with you.
did have, so in a way it did help me. So I,
Because that Q&A PDF is for revision, and if you're
yes,
reading the
yes,
newspaper daily, so I think that solves the puzzle for you.
sort of, but I still was not personally very satisfied with my
Hmm.
attempt in GA. So but given the paper and in hindsight, I may say, okay, I mean I can say I did a decent job in that paper as well.
Understood. So see, shifting from CSAT, which is
Yes,
qualifying in nature,
yes, sir.
to examinations which solely depend on QRE, SBI,
Yes, sir.
PO, है ना? They are
Absolutely.
heavily dependent on scoring good in quant, reasoning, and English. So
Very true. Very
how
true.
difficult was that shift?
So I mean, I would call it a nightmare to me because SBI
I can
PO was
imagine that.
again, SBI PO mains was again a headache for me.
Uh,
So again, their GA and English saved the day for me.
hmm.
So maths and reasoning were like single digit scores even in that paper.
Okay.
So, so fortunately in that year, I think every question had the
Okay.
same weightage in SBI PO in 2018. So
Hmm.
prior to that, they had a different weightage for reasoning. They had a different per question weightage for maths part also. So that saved the day. It was a purely lucky paper for me.
Hmm.
So that was it. And if I can take the name, I joined Time. So Time is a very popular institute in Bangalore
Hmm.
for quant reasoning. So I joined there, and
At
they
one
no
time,
doubt.
I used to be very famous for cat coaching also.
Yes. They are very popular for cat. So I joined them, and they would try to help me out, but still I was not able to learn much of quant and reasoning.
Okay.
So
Reluctant
that's
engineer coming here also, na? That means
possibly. Even as a child, I used to score very well in social studies and do
uh,
like. I mean, I would.
it's really unfortunate वैसे कि someone who is having interest in social studies, na, history, civics, polity,
Yes,
and
sir.
that
Yes,
person
sir.
taking engineering, and after that deciding that okay, I am interested in socioeconomic issues and so on and so forth.
Yes, sir.
So
Yes,
it's
sir.
a sad reality of India as such.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Because I remember very well. I told that I want to do something in this part. So I would. I mean, when I completed 10th, I said I want to take up law as a career, BA, LLB, or something like that. 10th and 12th. So by the time I came to 12th, I had no courage to swim against the tide of engineering. So it was my own making as well.
I
So
understand.
I said when my family members, when my elders are advised to keep engineering as a safe backup. So
It's
I
a
just
safe
come.
backup,
It's
right?
a safe backup. So I just started studying for that entrance exam and cleared engineering entrance.
Mhm. Understood. Acha, so how did you overcome that fear of quant and reasoning? So was it something that was pre-planned that I'll be scoring better in English and GA and Q and R I can do reasonably well and not that
Uh,
well?
so yes, what you said in the beginning was right, that it was a calculated bet that I took.
Mhm.
कि reasoning और अपना I mean sorry English और
English and
अपने
GA.
GA में तो कर लूंगा थोड़ा बहुत तो.
Mhm.
So I had that confidence. But yes, quant and reasoning were always trouble areas for me, have always been trouble areas. And in fact, the very reluctance to shift from civil services even after successive failures was because of this fear in my mind. But somehow it worked well, and somehow I even cracked SBI PO, I cracked GIC, I cracked 2 or 3 prelims of RBI grade B, and even this prelims. So I mean, I would suggest people not to have any preconceived thought in mind कि मुझे नहीं होगा ये, because someone who is scoring single digit is also cracking SBI PO. So that is enough of a precedence for anyone to take a bold step to switch over to other career option.
Right. Understood.
That's how it went about, sir.
So this is the case with many civil services aspirants, because ना जो लोग तैयारी ही SBI PO की करते हैं, PO level exams ही करते हैं, they start with quant and reasoning.
Yes, sir.
Someone who is diving into civil services, that person will start with NCRTs.
Absolutely right.
Constitutional work पढ़ते हैं, geography पढ़ते हैं, polity पढ़ते हैं ना.
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल absolutely.
गैप इतना पड़ जाता है 3 साल के अंदर कि Q&A तो out of the window.
बहुत लंबा. I mean I still cannot solve a quadratic equation as quick as my competitors can. Right. So I still have that phobia or that fear. So I remember
ऐसे shortcut use कर देंगे, we'll not be able to understand कि ये क्या.
No, absolutely not, because I remember one quadratic equation question had come up in the grade B prelims, and that was about using the formula for product of roots and sum of roots. So I was discussing this question with my friend in office canteen. So he just did it orally. And I spent about 10 minutes in solving that question alone.
Because you were going logically, he was going with the formula or the shortcut.
Yes, he knew the formula कि भाई ये product का होगा तो इतना आएगा, sum of the roots होगा तो इतना आएगा. Right. So that's the kind of preparation that I went with for quant and reasoning.
I understood. ठीक है. अच्छा, Prithviraj, any message for the aspirants in general? Because my questions are finished.
Yeah.
Any message for the aspirants in general?
Yes. The message that I would give to aspirants is, first message is, never be taken aback by 1 or 2 failed attempts. So I have just spoken about RBI 2018 and NABARD 2020. So these were only 2 instances that I mentioned. But when I started off in February 2018, I started off with Canara Bank PO, which I could not clear. There were various bank exams that I could not clear, but I knew that opportunities were plenty. So if not this exam, मैं तो अगला exam करूँगा. Not that I was in the best state of mind at that time, because coming from 3 failed attempts and looking at a future where you have no career option, that prospect was always there, because ultimately these are all competitive exams. Right. Today I might have succeeded, tomorrow someone else might succeed. In the past someone else had succeeded. So that fear and that thought will always be there, but your mental strength will depend on how you overcome that. So it takes immense mental strength to crack any exam, and I believe that strength is there within each individual who even takes the, I wouldn't say risk, who even takes the bold decision to appear in these exams. So आधी जंग तो आपने वहीं पे जीत ली है, अगर आप appear ही नहीं करेंगे तो आप qualify कैसे करोगे?
Understood.
तो appear करना अपने आप में बहुत बड़ी बात होती है. So this is an important takeaway. Then, as I have iterated at various instances during my conversation with you, sir, I would say never be taken aback by the paper itself. कि अगर paper ऐसा आया है तो I have to attempt it, no matter what. I can't leave the battle midway. So that's an important takeaway. Always be conscious about your previous attempt. Attempts that you have given in the past need not bog you down, but at the same time, you should not lose the benefit of hindsight, because it is only you who knows what mistake you have committed in the past, and that mistake should never be committed in the future. As in my case, I committed the mistake of assuming that the paper is being difficult only to me, but that paper was unconventional for everyone, and everyone landed with the same score. And I opened social media after coming home, and everyone was complaining कि paper ऐसा था, paper वैसा था. So had I
कि हमसे नहीं solve हो रहा, किसी से नहीं solve हो रहा होता.
Simple, very simple. But you have to be very true to your conscience कि मैंने तैयारी अच्छी.
Yes.
That is very important.
You should have that confidence कि मैंने सही से पढ़ा है, उसके बावजूद अगर मेरे से solve नहीं हो रहा तो इसका मतलब पेपर मुश्किल आया है genuinely.
बिल्कुल मुश्किल आया है, सही बात.
This happens in UPSC also. कितनी बार cut off 116, 98.
बिल्कुल
That
बिल्कुल
cutoff difference is
बिल्कुल
only because of
बिल्कुल
the paper of the day.
बिल्कुल absolutely. And even I had just mentioned about my mains public administration score when we were discussing on
Right,
that.
right.
So it's a competitive process at the end of the day. And that's about it. और दूसरी बात ये है कि जो format change हुआ है, so you need not, I mean, any non-UPSC candidate need not assume that you cannot prepare for this exam at all, because the format has undergone a change. You have able mentors in the market. You have various altruistic platforms on Telegram who are there to help you out.
Right.
So just make the best of it, and there is no single source of preparation. You have to depend on coaching materials. You have to depend on your well-wishers, your mentors who are there on social media. You will have to do your own study, which is PIB, which is newspapers, which is ministry website. So the fourth point, this is the most important point. If you have the best mentor in the world, and if you're not doing this fourth point, it's of no use. That one has to always keep in mind. So the original sources will always be there. And for the descriptive, newspaper reading has become a non-negotiable requirement in the preparation.
Understood. Very, very well said. Prithviraj, any help EduTap provided during your preparation journey?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I would like to highlight two important steps that two important initiatives of EduTap that I had taken help from. So as I said, there are no single sources. Right. So the summary sheets of management helped me, because I couldn't go back and study Sadhana and Sadhana. I couldn't study Prasad and Prasad. I couldn't study Stephen Robbins, although I studied Stephen Robbins during the intervening period. But the last minute revision, जो 2-4 दिन की revision होती है. So I just found it convenient to go back to EduTap's summary sheets. So those small materials that you provide.
Yes. They are for quick revision itself.
Yes. So that is one. So the management part was covered from there. Right. And as I said, the basics of finance, I had studied this for 2018 paper from your material.
Understood.
So the sundry aspects, like the general topics, basically.
Derivatives, time value.
Yes.
The hardcore topics of finance.
The hardcore topics of finance, जैसे आपका weighted average cost of capital, बाकी वगैरह capital budgeting.
Technical aspects of finance.
Technical aspects. So that was EduTap. Then I had requested for a schedule of mock interview with EduTap, and it was a telephonic interview. So I think it was PC Negi sir and
PL Negi, Pyarala Negi sir. PL.
Yes, PL Negi sir and another sir. I mean, I beg your pardon, I do not recollect his name. So yes, so the two sirs were asking me questions, and they basically told me ki your preparation is good, your content is good, you know much about your work experience, you're sure about your the company profile that you work for and those topics. It's just that I needed to structure the answer properly in order to be effectively articulated in an oral format. Because in the written format, you always have the opportunity to think and then put it on paper or type it. Typing means you have even more advantage that you can go back backspace and correct it. But it doesn't happen in the oral interview. So once you've spoken, you can't do anything about it. So the train of thought and the articulation, both things have to happen at the same time. So these are a few important feedbacks that I received from the panel.
Okay, understood.
So that has been the role of EduTap. And one before anything else, I would like to say that always have one important interview partner in your preparation. So I had the benefit of one individual who is working as an assistant in RBI right now. Okay. So I and he used to, we used to discuss on WhatsApp. We used to have a weekend telephonic conversation on financial news, on annual report of RBI, and basically the monetary policy committee meetings and all that, the resolutions of monetary policy committee, the resolutions of that's about it. So we used to discuss on all those things. We used to discuss the governor, deputy governor speeches also,
because until and unless you put your thoughts into words,
yes.
You can believe that, okay, I have read everything, I know. But unless you use actual words that come out of your mouth.
That is one part. And the another part is like, while we speak, I may come up with some query which I will address to that individual, and that individual will come up with some query. Yes. So that will enrich you as a personality, as an individual for the interview.
Understood.
So this was the basic gist of my preparation and the journey per se.
Thank you so much. This was a
Thank
very
you, sir.
elaborate discussion, and I think the lengthiest interview till date. But
Thank you.
really,
Thanks for having me, sir.
really added value to the entire, preparation process. Thank you so
Thank you,
much,
sir.
Prithviraj, for taking
Thank
time
you.
out.
Thank you so much, sir. Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Yeah, and have a good day.
You too, sir. Have a good day.
Bye.
Yes. Bye, bye, sir. Bye, bye. Thank you.